Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 3 of High Street Sports. As you can see on the screen, we have co-host Vince back. Vince was on vacation last week. Vince, how was the beach?
It was fantastic. Glad to get away, but getting away during training camp is not always the best thing in the world. So let's get right to it. Let's talk captains. Maybe go over an offensive preview and a defensive preview today for Ohio State. And I believe you have something to get off your chest. So go right ahead with it.
Let's talk about something real quick. And there's this whole notion since the Peach Bowl, and I think that pretty much gets right into what we're going to talk about right now. We're going to talk about Georgia and Georgia fans real quick. There's a notion that appears to be that Ohio State fans can't get over what happened in the Peach Bowl, can't get over the Marvin Harrison target, no target, whatever the case is. That couldn't be further from the truth. Online for the last 6 months, all you see on every SEC fan page that seems to pop up on my Facebook for whatever fucking reason is all this stuff about night this, night that. Marv can't take a hit this. Marv can't take a hit that. He wasn't concussed. He wasn't this. Ohio State stinks. I'm overseeing it. I'm over the Georgia fans. They seem to think or can only remember the last 2 years. Okay. Well, you want to talk about the last 2 years? We can talk about the last 2 years. However, I would like to pull up some stats here, if you would allow. Since the year 2002, okay, Georgia has had 6 seasons with over 3 losses. That includes a 9-4, an 8-5, a 6-7 in 2010, an 8-5 in 2013, another 8-5 in 2016. I mean, if you want to talk about consistency, which is something that they don't have over the last 20 years, that's fine. But let's not talk like, Georgia is just automatically the king of college football after finally getting over the hump with Kirby Smart and winning back-to-back national championships. But let's also talk about something here. If the shoe was on the other foot, Georgia fans, and you cannot look at me in the eyes with a straight face and tell me otherwise. Let's say Brock Bowers was getting ready to catch a touchdown pass to extend the lead in the third quarter of a college football playoff semifinal game to send you to the Natty. And Brock Bowers gets leveled in the back of the end zone the same way that Marvin Harrison does. A, there's no shot that flag gets picked up after being called targeting on the field. And B, the Georgia fans would have used that excuse for years. Okay? So let's not pretend like this is just an Ohio State thing. Let's not pretend like it's just Ohio State fans that are barking about this same issue that Georgia fans have been bringing up gladly for the last 6 months. Okay? Ohio State fans have dropped it. We haven't talked about it. We haven't even discussed talking about it on this show, even though we're only in the 3rd episode. But this is ridiculous, this notion that Ohio State fans are the ones that are holding on to this when all I see every single day on social media is Georgia fans talking about how Marvin can't take a hit. Get over it. Act like you've been here before. I mean, for fuck's sake. You won back-to-back national championships, and this is all you want to talk about? Looks like there's more Ohio State fans in the Deep South than any of us thought, and half of them reside in Athens, Georgia. Let's move on.
Dang. I was just going to point out the fact that Georgia may be in for a real issue this season if they don't get their offense working right. They lost their offensive coordinator Todd Monken after last season. And Mike Bobo is stepping in. Mike Bobo was previously at Georgia from 2001 to 2014 as the QB coach and OC from 07 to 14, along with those quarterback coaching duties. Let's take a look at some of those quarterbacks that they had in that time. They had David Green, DJ Shockley. The only one really of record is Matthew Stafford in that time period. Outside of that, it's been nobody. They had all these highly rated players. I'll give you a good example of that, and that is Aaron Murray. Came in, was supposed to be the next Matthew Stafford. Where's he at? He's awful. He was awful the whole time. So I'm not convinced that Mike Bobo can turn it around for Georgia and get this offense back to where they were last season. So I will have to give John Ross a big shout out and say, yeah, I think I'm on that LSU train now too.
Go Tigers.
It's funny. I just heard something that called that called him the Ed Warner of LSU football.
Ooh. Ooh. That's an indictment.
But he won a national championship. So
that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
One half a dozen the other. All right, let's get to the show. Since we got off track here.
I had to get that off my chest. Georgia has had 6 seasons since 2002 with 3 losses or more. Ohio State in that same time period has had 1. And that 1 season of more than 3 losses was the Luke Fickell transition year between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. So
yeah, and let's be honest about this here. Luke Fickell was not. That's not an indictment on him as a coach that single season. Look at what he's done since he's gone to Cincinnati and now what he can do here at Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin's going to be a team to watch out for. He's got a pretty good offensive coordinator in there, and we know that Wisconsin is historically good on defense and good in the run game. So if he can get that pass game going in Wisconsin, he might be onto something there. And that'll be a scary team out west for this season until the divisions go away.
Mm-hmm. All right.
On that note, we do have some captains that were announced yesterday afternoon. So that would have been Saturday, August the 19th. 3 of them this season. I think there were like 26 last season. So I think that this is probably an improvement. You've got Cade Stover, Tommy Eichenberg, and Xavier Johnson. Along with that, Xavier Johnson's going to wear the Block O jersey. Mm-hmm. I would say that this is a group of, captains that are good culture guys and good guys in the room, guys that you want to see out there every play. They're going to give you 100% and play their whole game. As hard as they possibly can. So I think these are good choices for captains. One thing I saw that was kind of interesting. There was no quarterbacks, as we've seen in the past years, and there were no guys that came out of here going, interesting. I'm curious as to why that guy's a captain. Similar to Taraja Mitchell in the past, when really he was a team guy, but didn't really play very much. Now is transferred to Florida. Is going to be playing his 25th year in college this season. Actually, I think it's his 6th or 7th. But with all the COVID rules and stuff, it's kind of hard to figure out what season somebody's in. But I think that these captains are going to show that this team is built on toughness and strong competitive standards. Xavier Johnson has a hell of a story coming from a walk-on scout team guy. He's played defensive back. He's played corner. He's played wide receiver. He's played running back. He's played just about every position a skill guy can on the scout team, worked his way up, got a scholarship last season, saw some significant time in that Notre Dame game, and really found himself a role throughout the season. He's kind of one of those glue guys, very similar to how Mitch Rossi was last year as well.
Yeah, when you look at Xavier Johnson, like you alluded to earlier, he got the Blocko jersey yesterday. He's a guy who, by all accounts, is the ultimate team guy. And then, like you alluded to just a second ago, with his story from becoming a walk-on scout team guy, and then now catching the game-winning pass in the shoe last year against Notre Dame. I mean, he's a guy that you want around. And you talk about the depth at receiver, and everybody has talked about that the last couple of weeks. And you kind of think about, well, will the freshman get enough playing time? Brian Hartline's got a good pulse on this group. He knows what he's doing. But X is a guy that you want in that room. He's a guy that, when he decided to come back, you welcome him with open arms. And then you talk about Cade Stover, who is somebody who only had a broken back and wanted to get back in that game. He's a dog, and he's going to do whatever it takes to win. And Tommy Two Thumbs, so that speaks for itself. Tommy's also a dog. He's the anchor of that defense. He's going to be somebody who Ohio State's going to lean on a lot this year, and who that defense is going to lean on a lot, and who's going to be an on-field leader. But I think when you look at the totality of all three of those, not much argument there. I did find it interesting, though, that Marvin didn't make that list. I thought he might have been one that was, going to be a captain this year. But regardless, that's neither here nor there. I like the group of captains, and I think this is a good, solid, small group of three to lead this pivotal Ohio State season in the direction that you want it to go.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to see no one from Zone 6 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Emeka could have been one of those guys, Emeka Buka. Even potentially Julian Fleming. Just for how long he's been in the program, he kind of shows the values that they're looking for culturally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that 3 is the right number for this season. I think what it looked like they were trying to do was to make it a little more clear on who the leaders were and what traits they were looking for. And now I know that these are likely voted on by the team. So that's, that shows you that those 3 guys have the locker room. They are the leaders there. And they're doing everything that they should be. So, they showed that last season, especially Cade and Tommy. X did too, but Cade and Tommy obviously being 2 of the bigger the bigger culture guys, I guess, on their respective sides of the football, just hard, tough-nosed guys. Cade's a guy that said, I don't need any NIL, just give me more tractors, which was a lot of people haven't noticed. That is a brilliant move. Especially when you're talking about $500,000 for a tractor. That's a heck of a deal if you're getting something like that out of NIL. And then he can go on to help his family's farm. It just shows the true character of that kid is he just wants to go out there and be himself and be the best tight end that he can be. And speaking of tight ends, this was something that I just kind of thought of. Do you see any other tight end emerging this season outside of Cade Stover? And do you think it'll be Joe Royer, or do you think it'll be someone else?
I definitely think that Joe Royer is poised for a big year. I think that when you look at the situation with Bennett Christian and some of that stuff, that kind of opens up the depth chart there at tight end a little bit. I absolutely expect a big year from Joe Royer. I expect a big year from the tight ends in general. I think this is a year that, especially to start, I think you're going to see a lot of the tight end safety blanket. And I think, that's going to bode well for Ohio State. I think we've seen in the successful seasons for Ohio State in the past, they have featured, one, if not two, capable tight ends. So I think, that option is important for Ohio State. I think Ryan Day knows that, and I think the rest of the staff knows that. So I think that they will do whatever it takes to get Joe involved. And if Joe's had as good of a progression as they talked about, even in the Peach Bowl prep last year, I mean, they raved about Joe in his preparation for that month. So I think Joe is in a big position to have a bit of a breakout year, and I think. Like I said, when you look at the offense and you look at what we're going to need out of the quarterback and potentially what's going to be there and available for him, whether it be Devin or Kyle, I think he's going to have a litany of weapons at his disposal, and I think the tight ends are going to be as big of a part, just as the receivers and running backs are.
Yeah, I think G. Scott could potentially be one of those guys as well. He really needs to step up, especially after that mental mistake in the game last year, going and headbutting a dude on the sideline. Not a great look. I understand it. He was, it was in the heat of the game, frustrated. But you want to see a guy like that bounce back. His stats last year were not great. He played in 12 games. Had 5 receptions for 28 yards with 1 touchdown. His longest reception was for 16 yards. Yeah. So a chunk of that 28 yards was all in one. And I believe that was his touchdown as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
You want to see him out there progressing. I think that, having a receiver skill set as well, him coming in as a receiver initially anyway, I think that they need to kind of run him a little more of a receiving tight end situation.
Jimmy Graham style.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
You get it.
Exactly. So, exactly. All right. And so with that talk there, let's roll over to the defensive side of the ball and kind of look at our defensive preview here. So first, a couple of things about last year, right? Consistency was something that was really lacking last season. Consistency in tackling, coverage, and pass rush were the 3 biggest areas. When you take a look at the stats and how they were graded, or how games were graded for Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, and Penn State were the 3 worst tackling games graded by Pro Football Focus. The Michigan was 5th worst. So you look at that, and all of your big games were not very good as far as it goes on the defensive side of the ball. Some of their best games were Michigan State, Iowa, Arkansas State, and Rutgers as far as tackling goes. Those are just teams that you're going to be good against. You're going to be good against defensively, but you need to show that consistency week to week. And we saw in both the Notre Dame game and Michigan games last year that those missed tackles can be huge. They led
100%.
to 2-3 massive touchdowns after just getting made look stupid on some missed tackles. So Penn State game, there were 14 missed tackles. Georgia, 11 missed tackles. And Notre Dame, 11 missed tackles. That's a lot. I was going through Georgia's stats as well this morning, since they were probably the best defense in the nation last year. They also had some inconsistencies with tackling, but where they made that up was in the pass rush and their coverage. Ohio State's 3 worst coverage grades were against Wisconsin, which you can kind of throw that one out. Wisconsin last year and probably up until now was not really a pass heavy or pass reliant offense. Mm-hmm. So, you may not have the best grades there, but the other 2 were Notre Dame and Georgia. And then fourth on that list was Michigan. So, those are some things that they need to really, really look at and try to improve this season. And I think with an overhauled secondary, adding in Davison Igbenogson, Jihad Carter, and just the overall improvements from some of the guys on the back end. I'm not ready to say that Cameron Martinez or Lathan Ransom are the guys yet, because we saw how inconsistently average they were last season. I wouldn't call them bad, because they did play well, but they were just average, and their consistency was that of a young guy. So you hope that with another camp under these guys' belts, another spring under their belts, because I think one thing that we don't really look at is the last couple of years, camps and spring practice have been a little different. So it has hurt a lot of these guys' development. And then you add in the inconsistency of coaching staff and the continuity there. You're really asking for issues. And so I would say that Jim Knowles probably did actually a pretty good job with what he had to work with last season. But consistency has to get there. And I think one thing that will help coverage and tackling is going to be a strong pass rush. You've got guys like JT, who I think he can be an impact player like a Nick Bosa, a Joey Bosa, or a Chase Young. What do you think on JT with that? I know we saw a little bit of it in Penn State last season, but do you think he can string it along for the whole season this year?
Absolutely, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. I think, one of the things that you look at with last season's defense and the struggles at corner and stuff like that had a lot to do with depth. Denzel Burke going down to training camp in the first scrimmage last year, and then the litany of injuries that followed in the secondary and inconsistent rotations in the defensive line and all kinds of stuff like that. That played a huge part. And I think with the addition of Davison Igbenogson, and the renewed sense of confidence that Denzel Burke seems to have, he's healthy now. He feels the best he's felt in 2 years. I'm looking for Denzel to get back to his freshman year form, and if that happens, I think it's scary hours for Ohio State, because when you can lock down the perimeter and really let guys like JT and Kenyatta Jackson and Michael Hall Jr. and the rest of those guys really pin their ears back and get after it and get back to the Rushman mentality that we've seen at Ohio State from Larry Johnson. I think that bodes well for everybody involved. And when you talk about a guy like JT, who showed in that Penn State game how explosive and dominant he can be, I think you put a guy like Jack Sawyer on the other side who has another year of development. I think you let those two pin their ears back and get after it, and there's no telling what could happen. So I definitely am looking for JT to have a good season, if not a great season. I think from day one, we need to see that dominance out of him that we saw against Penn State last year. And if he can show that for a full season, I think his numbers could look a lot like Chase Young's numbers did.
Yeah, I think you're right there. One thing I think he needs is another guy on the other side to step up and be a consistent player, right? Whether it's Jack Sawyer or Kenyatta Jackson or anyone else. There's two more players on that defensive line that I would like to see it play a little more this year, and that's Michael Hall. I know he was injured last season a little bit, which kind of led to him being in and out, but also Tyleik Williams. He was not hurt last season, and he didn't get to play very much because he's not consistent. He can't get in there and be trusted in those big situations. And I'm hoping that this being the third year he's in this program, he can finally figure it out and go ahead and make those plays. be consistent and be that starter or be that guy that's playing 30 plus snaps a game. That way you can get him in there. And I think that is also one of the things that we don't necessarily see always either. Is that consistency. I want to see less rotation. I think that there was too much rotation on the defensive line last season, where I think we need to slow it down, come back and say, okay. And then Jack Sawyer, I really think he needs to step up his third year in the program as well. Had 3 sacks last season, 2 of them against Indiana and 1 against Maryland. You got to be better than that, man. You got to have more sacks. You got to be more impactful. And you really have to be the guy that you want to be. One of Jack's worst games last season, tackling wise, actually overall, was the Georgia game. He was not very good against Georgia. And it's tough. It is very tough. He only played 16 snaps though against Georgia, which is pretty low. That was his second lowest of the season. His first lowest was Michigan. He had 15. So I think looking at that, it shows that he wasn't as trusted as we thought he might be at that point in the season. I think that JT was just a little bit further along than him, able to come in and show us what he's got. And was very happy to see that. So I think that defensive line is going to be key to this. I think that we know that the linebackers are going to be really good. But there's one more unknown that could turn into a very big upside if he can find a way to play a lot and play consistently, and that is Sonny Styles. What is the guy, first of all? Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? Is he a corner? Or is he just a freak? Because the dude seems like he's just a freak of nature that can play all 3 positions and will ball out when we let him ball out.
I don't care what position he plays. I don't care if he's levitating off the field. I don't care if he swanton bombs in from the C deck. He needs to be on the field, and that's just a fact. And you've heard it from everybody inside the Woody all offseason. The goal is to find a way for Sonny to be on the field for as many snaps as he can. And I think that, that's imperative. You look at the safety position last year and the inconsistency that was the safety position. Lathan Ransom had a lot of good games, but he also had a couple clunkers and a couple, misplays. And that's not to say anything bad about Lathan. Lathan's a great player, but I do think you need to see that consistency out of Lathan. And I think, one way to do it is to put an absolute athletic freak on the field in Sonny Styles and let him go make plays. I mean, period. That's, you have renewed depth at defensive line. You have a really solid linebacking core. You've got, renewed depth and confidence and health in the corners. And now what can finish that defense? You put Sonny Styles back there and you let Sonny Styles do Sonny Styles things. And I think, in some of the games that Sonny got to play, a little bit of a bigger role, namely against Notre Dame last year to open the season. I mean, wow. He had an impact and you could feel him on the field almost immediately. So I think, Sonny Styles is a key player on this defense, and, which might sound funny to say for somebody who hasn't really gotten as much playing time as some of the other guys on the field. But Sonny Styles is key for this team. And, he could be the anchor in the second level and deep down the field that can go lay a hit on somebody, go jar the ball loose on a 50-50 ball, go get a 50-50 ball. One thing that Ohio State needs is to create some turnovers more than they have, in the last couple of years on defense. And I think that Sonny is a guy who's poised to go in there and make stuff happen. And we've talked about it too. And this is the most, you alluded to this earlier, this is the most continuity the defensive coaching staff has had in probably 5 or 6 years. So you put that trust into Jim Knowles to come do what he's been paid handsomely to come do, and that's make sure Ohio State is a powerhouse on defense. And what starts with being a powerhouse is having the absolute best 11 on the field and when it matters. And there's been a big question of, does Larry Johnson still have it? Can he still make it happen on the field? Can he still recruit? Can he this? Can he that? The answer to all of that is yes. And the only thing that needs to happen is for him to get out of his own way and, figure out the rotation issues and figure out all that other stuff. And Ohio State's defensive line is going to power everything that happens this season. And that includes letting Sonny Styles go out there and roam and make plays. And I think, Sonny is exactly that. Sonny's a freak. And he's a big guy who can move quickly and lay the boom on you. And I think he could join the list of safeties at Ohio State that will go on to have great careers in the NFL.
Yeah, I think Sonny Styles might be one of those guys that we compare to at the end of this season to Darren Lee and that position that he played in especially the 2014 season and 2015 season, but mostly the 2014 season just because we won the championship that year. But he kind of played that hybrid safety linebacker role, even though it was still a traditional 4-3 defense. He was not necessarily always a nickel, but he played that role kind of in there and out and covered in the slot. I think you're going to see a lot of that from Sonny this year. I think he can cover in the slot. I think he can play well in the box. He definitely has the size to do both of those things. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're also going to see him, be that impact player that we're looking for, maybe similar to an Isaiah Simmons type of impact. I think that this defense kind of needs someone like that on a yearly basis, especially when you hear all this talk about the Jack Me Off Leo position, whatever that is called. Like, I gotta give credit where it's due. I heard that one on Menace to Sports this week and thought it was hilarious because it's true. It's like, what is it?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. What is
Nobody
it?
knows.
Only Jim Knowles knows. And
does he?
I don't know.
I don't know. But
I don't
whatever
know.
the position is, it seems like a perfect fit for CJ Hicks to play. Why that hasn't been, confirmed, that's another guy. You look at guys that need to be on the field for this defense. It starts with Sonny Styles, and second on that list is CJ Hicks. I don't know how you get him in that rotation because I don't see Tommy or Steele coming off the field a whole lot, especially in high leverage situations. But CJ Hicks is a guy that you want to talk about a freak show. I mean, CJ Hicks is the definition of a freak show. And whether it be Jack, whatever, you got to have him on the field too. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you got to find ways to get those guys out on the field. And with that, I think CJ Hicks would be a good guy to go in and spell maybe Tommy Eichenberg when you need to go to a more dynamic package on defense. Not that Tommy Eichenberg's not a dynamic linebacker. Let's not go that route. I think that he is a good linebacker, but he's a straight ahead, old school, run stopping linebacker and can cover all right for a middle linebacker. But do you not know what to do with your hands? Are you Ricky Bobbying me right now?
Tommy Two Thumbs.
Oh, got it. But no, I think that CJ Hicks would be a good guy to come in there. You leave Steele out on the field. You've got Steele, you've got CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles, that's a pretty athletic, linebacker slash whatever you want to call them package. And really you could even run that kind of like a passing down package where you're going to rush, all four of your big guys, get both Mike Hall, Tyleek Williams, Jack, and JT on the field and run that at like a rushman package and have those guys cover the middle. In intermediate areas, I don't know how much better you can get. You're going to have some freaks there. Let the freaks play is what we need to make the mantra of this season. Just let the freaks play. Who cares what they play? Let them play. Just get them out on the field. I don't care, because guess what? Those guys, they are freaks for a reason. And it's because they've worked hard all of their life. They've been given all of the athletic ability, and let them show what it is. One of those guys that I don't think was shown enough, but was just a freaky athlete, was Javonte Jean Baptiste. He when he got on the field, he at times you looked at him and you go, that dude is a freak of nature, would destroy tackles. But he didn't get out there a lot because there were guys that were more consistent than him. But you can't show that consistency if you're not out there all the time. So you got to show it in practice every single day. So it really comes down to, are these guys going to be good practice players and show that they can make that leap from being the guy in high school to now being the guy at the Ohio State University? And I think they can. I think that those guys definitely will be there. As far as corners, though, I'm interested to understand what we're going to see out there as far as Denzel Burke, obviously, probably the shoe-in for one of those outside positions. You'd like to see you'd like to see Jordan Hancock maybe step up, but I don't think he is. I think you're going to see Igbinosun out there at that other corner a lot more than we really are being led to believe right now.
Oh, I think Davison Igbinosun will probably play more of the snaps, but I think, Ohio State's in a good situation at corner. They've got, about a 3-guy rotation that they're going to be comfortable using. And, that's going to help a lot of things. So, I mean, consistency is there again, the big thing here. But I think, with the offseason that we've had and the way the corners, have seemed to look in training camp so far, I don't really have that on my list of concerns at the moment here. So I think we're full speed ahead on the defense.
Yeah, and just some notable backups there, or depth at corner. You've got Lorenzo Styles, Sonny's brother, who just transferred from Notre Dame, played there 2 seasons as a wide receiver and switched in the spring to cornerback, and is going to play cornerback here at Ohio State. Would love to see him on special teams as a returner. I think he could be pretty dynamic. And really kind of give that edge that we need on special teams, especially in the return game. Something that we haven't really seen since Emeka Egbuka's freshman year. Remember all those kick returns he would bring back and just ran right through guys because he was ready. And then they took him away from it because they didn't want him to get hurt on special teams and play on the offense. And that's great. But I think you've got a guy, Lorenzo Styles, that could probably do it. He may not get the most playing time, which might be good for the philosophy that it seems that they're doing, and that Parker Fleming has implemented here at Ohio State. And when I say Parker Fleming, I mean Ryan Day really implemented it, and Parker Fleming's coaching within that. So, those are some names to look out for. Also, Jair Brown, he stepped in pretty well last year. I would like to see him play kind of a nickel corner type of position. I think he's got that right frame for it. He's not the tallest guy. He's not the longest guy, but you don't really get those in the slot anyway. Those are usually faster, twitchier guys, and I think Jair Brown would be a good player there. But all of that remains to be seen. And moving forward, what do you think about this defensive line? Do you think that we're going to do you think this defensive line is going to be one of the greater ones, or do you think that we're going to have some struggles here this season?
I don't have any worry about the defensive line as it stands right now. I mean, obviously health is the issue. Health was the issue last year with Michael Hall getting banged up and some other things like that, but I don't think so. I think it's deep. It's ready to go make some plays. So I think, I don't have any reservation about Larry Johnson. The dude can still coach his ass off, and there's some dudes on that defensive line. Now go make plays. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to be? Let's go. It's a two-part question here. Who do you think will be the biggest surprise on defense this season, and who do you think will be the biggest impact player?
Biggest impact player, I think, is going to be JT Tuimoloau. I think, when you talk about the success that Ohio State's had recently, and what powered the 2014 national championship and some of those other things, were a dominant defensive line. I don't by any means say that at this point in his development is JT on the same level as the Bosas or Chase Young. I don't want to say that, and don't get that misconstrued. However, when you look at the type of impact that he could have, I mean, that we're looking at one game here because that's the one that sticks out, right? Is the Penn State game. Mm-hmm. But the dominance that he showed in that game was unbelievable. He single-handedly changed the tune of that game. And I think that that's something that he is more than capable of doing on a week-in, week-out basis. So I think the biggest impact player on the team on defense is JT Tuimoloau. But I think when you talk about surprising players, or, I could make that a 2 and 2, 1A, 1B sort of situation. I think I want to see Sonny Styles be a surprise. And by surprise, I mean a consistent season with him on the field, making plays and being an impact player there. However, I think I'm going to go a different route with 1B and go Davison Igbinosun, because Ohio State's never seen him before on the field for a full season. He has played a full season at Ole Miss, and was had a relatively good year as a freshman in the SEC. So let's see that translate to the Big Ten. Let's see him take that step. And he's been with Mick Marotti for an off season. He's had a full camp. Let's see Davison Igbinosun, who I think last week Jim Knowles awarded him with the Silver Bullet of the day. I think that's pointing in a big direction for Davison Igbinosun, and I think he is somebody who is going to come into Columbus and he's going to make an impact right away, and he is going to shore up an issue that Ohio State had last year, and that was depth at the cornerback position. So I think Davison Igbinosun is poised to be a breakout surprise welcome sight to Buckeye fans in Columbus.
Yeah, and for me, I think that the impact player is definitely going to be either JT or Sonny Styles. I think you need an impact guy there in one of those two positions, if not both. And I'll go back to the 2019 season where we saw both Chase Young and Jeff Okudah just ball out, both of them. And they did it in sync. And I think that might be the key to this year's defense, is putting those two guys in sync. And that is JT and Sonny Styles, and just letting them wreak havoc on the game. As far as the surprise on defense, I think it's going to come somewhere in that linebacker room. I'm not sure where it's going to come from yet, but I think you're going to have someone come in, and it may be CJ Hicks. We don't know. But I think you're going to have someone come in and really cement themselves as that third linebacker ahead of Cody Simon even. Cody
Who,
Simon
by all accounts, has had a good offseason. Heard a lot of good things about Cody Simon and his development this offseason. So hopefully he can come in and be an extra asset for that linebacker room. But Cody Simon has in the last week or so, you've been hearing a few more things out of coaches about Cody Simon. So hopefully he's another one that can step up and make an impact.
Yeah, and I think he's an older. I believe he's a senior. Yeah, older guy, has some experience. I think he's going to bring a lot of depth, but I think that you need to have another impact there at linebacker. I think that that's going to help, but I think really the biggest thing is you need someone to stand out at either one of those safety positions or the corner position, which is why I say that Sonny Styles might be the guy there as an impact player. But as far as surprises, maybe even Tywone Malone. He hasn't been hearing. You haven't heard a lot about him, but he played in the SEC last season, and by all accounts is going to be a good solid depth player. Maybe he steps in and fills a role that someone like Tyleik Williams or Michael Hall Jr. cannot do, and that's play a consistent 35 or 40 snaps a game and be that guy. I think that might be the key to this, the pass rushes or even the run stop too. But really the defensive line's overall performance, I think you're going to need a tackle that comes in and brings that consistency. Tywone Malone, being a junior with 2 years left, coming from Ole Miss, I think could do that. He knows what it's like to play in the SEC and really hit guys and play that harder style of football.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And moving forward to the offense, last year we saw a couple of things. We saw some inconsistency in the run game, a lot of that due to injuries. I think we played 5 running backs and all 5 of them got injured at one point in the season.
It's miserable.
There were how many games where we didn't know who the running back was going to be until they ran the first person out to play the game, because both running backs were hurt. Both Mayan and Trey were hurt at some point, and both of them were hurt at the same time at times. And it was like, okay, who's less hurt to play? I think that you may see a guy like Chip Trainum step up this season. He was really, really good down the stretch last season. Part of it, I think, was because he was fresh. But also Dallin Hayden did the same thing last year too. So who's going to step up in that run game? Who's going to be the starter? And what do you think it's going to take to get more consistency in their run game this season?
I don't really. To me, there's no question about who the best running back on this team is, and a lot of people might have forgotten. A lot of people might, have become infatuated with a new toy. I don't know what the case is. TreVeyon Henderson is the clear number 1 running back on this team, and people forget how good he was as a freshman. And last year there were a lot of unfortunate injury setbacks for TreVeyon, and he was visibly frustrated about it on the field. And you could see that he wanted to do the things that he knows that he can do, which is not only run hard in between the tackles, but use that breakaway speed to go, break off a long run. And that seemed to be the talking point last year for the first probably 6 or 7 games is, why can't TreVeyon hit the hole? Why can't he get down the field and break off a long one? Well, the man was hurt all season. And so I'm looking for TreVeyon Henderson to come back, be the clear-cut number 1 running back on this team, and lead the Tote Nation room back to where, they know that they can be. And I think a guy like Mayan, who stepped in and carried the load for much of the season when Trey was out. That became to be quite the amusing game. Well, for some, I don't know if all Ohio State fans or coaches or anybody would call that an amusing thing to not know who your starting running back is going to be every week. But it's you saw Travion come out of the game and be sidelined for a few weeks with some injuries, and then Mayan came in and stepped in, and it was almost seamless. So you got to give your props to Mayan. He's a dog, big chop, knows how to run the ball. But I'm looking for TreVeyon Henderson to come back and really, really reassert his dominance as the running back number one in that room and be a huge, huge part of the Ohio State offense. And I think people want to talk about the great running back rooms in the Big Ten. You got Michigan, obviously, with their two-headed monster coming back, and you've got Wisconsin, who's got Chez Mellusi and Braylon Allen, who are two very capable running backs. But Ohio State has 5 guys on that roster at running back that could not only go start anywhere else in the country and have 1,000 yards, but there's 5 guys in the Ohio State backfield that are legitimate dogs at that position. And, but all that to say this, TreVeyon Henderson is still the best back on the team, and he will be the running back number one. And I think you heard Coach Day say that the other day in a presser. It's TreVeyon and everybody else, but we're going to figure out how to get everybody else the ball. And I don't doubt that in my mind, but I think TreVeyon Henderson is the no doubt running back number one on this team when he's healthy. And I don't really think there's much debate to that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, Mayan Williams has shown that he can be that guy as well. But I'm really interested to see what Evan Pryor can do. He was having a really good camp last year prior to his knee injury, missed spring this year, and last year, actually. So you want to see him succeed, come back after an injury. He has a lot of potential. But with that, how do you get 5 guys the ball in one game? Like I'm not sure how that's going to happen on a consistent basis. Or do they just go with whomever is the most consistent throughout camp and practice and keep it to a 2 to 3 guy rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's more of what you're going to look for, because when you have the skill set at receiver that the Buckeyes do, you got to get them the ball too. And Berm, Austin Ward, Landis, and the guys were talking on the podcast this past week about how to split up those carries, and you're not going to run the ball 50 times a game with that receiving core. You're just not gonna. So I think it starts with TreVeyon getting somewhere between 10 to 15 touches a game, and then Mayan, and then so on. But let's not forget about Dallin Hayden as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Evan Pryor was a guy who got hurt. You hate to see that, but you talk about Ohio State, and the mantra over the last 10 years or so has always been next man up. And Dallin Hayden grabbed that football last year and ran like a madman when his number was called. And that game against Maryland was, I mean, one of the best players in that game was Dallin Hayden. So you look at the stable of running backs, and I think it's going to have to be a situation where, guys are going to get a week off every now and again, or it's just going to be garbage time touches. And as frustrating as that might be for some of those guys who are towards the bottom of that depth chart, that kind of is what it is when the offense is set up the way it's set up. But I think it says a lot about Dallin Hayden, Evan Pryor, and the fact that they didn't jump ship when they could have. And I think I heard on the pod this week as well that Ohio State has one of, I think it was the second best retention rate during the NIL era of keeping their players around. And I think that speaks a lot to the man and coach that Tony Alford is. I mean, these guys want to stick around and they want to play for him. And he has their best interests, and they know that, and they know that they're going to have to step up and practice and make plays if they want to get on the field. So that is what it is. I don't foresee all 5 of them touching the ball in the same game, unless we're up 60 at Rutgers or whatever the case is. Then I think you'll start to see some of that depth come out. But when you have guys like Dallin and you have guys like Evan Pryor, you got to find a way to get them the ball, whether that's out of the backfield, whether you're catching the ball, throw them out of the slot or whatever. Sometimes, whatever the case is, they're going to touch the ball this season, and it might not be as much as they would like. But like I said, that speaks to the character that's in that quarter or the running back room right now, with the depth that's there and the fact that they were able to keep all of them.
Yeah, I think that Tony Alford is definitely the glue that keeps that room together. You look at what he's done. He kept 5 guys on his roster that all could be starting anywhere they wanted to in the country, outside of maybe Bama or Georgia. I'm not sure that Chip Trayanum could start there, but he did start at Arizona State before he came to Ohio State, right? He was their starting running back. So I think that any of those 5 guys could go just about anywhere and play right away. And to see them back together is something I think we may hear a lot of stories about, and if this team, it goes and lives up to their potential, then it could possibly be very similar to Mike Dawson 2002 saying, after that 2001 football season, saying he's coming back because he wants to win a natty. Well, guess what? His commitment there to come back destroyed the U for what we knew it as it was. I mean, the U hasn't recovered since 2003, since that fateful night in the Fiesta Bowl 2003.
I mean, people are saying that Ohio State broke the U.
I think C. Grant broke the U, but
I think C. Grant breaks anything that he types. Or in this case, touches. No, Ohio State definitely broke the U on that faithful day in Tempe, Arizona in 2003.
Yeah, and speaking of coaches who are really developing their rooms into what could be considered great, and that would be Justin Fry. He came in last season, highly touted, came from Chip Kelly's USC, and came in to be the O-line coach only at the time. I believe he's since added a co-coordinator title for some more money and a little more responsibilities. But you look at what he's doing here. He's brought it. He didn't really have a great room to begin with. The recruiting the last, I would say, 5 years in the offensive line has just been abysmal. And that's no indication that Justin Fry's a bad coach, because obviously he's only been here through one recruiting period and did a pretty good job, but didn't come in for the full recruiting period. So I think that the jury's still out on that one. I think he's going to end up being a better recruiter than Stud was. And I think he's also becoming a better. I think he's also going to become a better a better developer. Sorry, I broke there for a second.
You got to find it. No, I think you're exactly right, though. In adding the title of run game coordinator to sweeten that pay up a little bit for Justin Fry coming out of Chip Kelly's UCLA was
say UCF.
No, you said USC though, which is close. Los Angeles.
I meant UCLA.
Same thing, but different. No, when you look at that, I mean, and it's one of those things where last year Ohio State not last year, but last year and the year before, the run game kind of looked clunky. But you bring in a guy like Justin Fry, who you attach that run game coordinator position to his title, and you look at the development of the offensive line and how it went last year. And now, granted, last year you had some houses on that offensive line, namely on the right side with the biggest game jersey Nike's ever made in DeJuan Jones. It's kind of hard to replace a duplex on that side. But
hold on. Let me throw the flag here for the false start, because he just committed a false start again.
Leave him alone. It's not anywhere as bad as
it's
Isaiah
always
Prince,
those big guys on the right side. It's always those big guys on the right side that want to get a
Isaiah
jump.
Prince was a big dummy, and he didn't know how to football. So I don't know how is he still in the league?
I think so.
Oh God bless whatever quarterback is behind that offensive line that he's on the right side of. But I think this year is going to be
Russell Wilson.
Ooh, he's in Denver?
Yeah.
Oh,
but he signed a reserve future contract, so I don't know if he's going to play that much this season.
Let's, go Bucks, and he's a part of the Brotherhood, but good God, did he stink.
He was very inconsistent. I just remember a Penn State game with his inconsistencies, and it did not help us win that game. That's for sure. We lost that game too.
No. But anyways, there's a lot of question marks still to fill out on the offensive line, but if there's a guy that can do it, I mean, like you said, he was highly touted. He was highly sought after when he was leaving UCLA, and Ohio State was fortunate to make that play and grab him. So I think you're going to see the offensive line recruiting get back to where it was. And I think, this year is a big year for him to figure out how to plug and play with this current offensive line and put the new starter in position to succeed. And it starts with that offensive line.
Yeah, and you look at two of the guys that he brought in from the transfer portal this year. You've got Vic Cutler and Jimmy Simmons. I'll say this. I was just listening to an interview with Justin Fry, and apparently the Jimmy is a reference to The Office when Michael Scott went down into the warehouse and started calling a guy by a bunch of different names. And so that's how Josh Simmons got his Jimmy pseudonym. They've got a lot of Joshes, is what he said.
Yeah,
I got a lot of Joshes. You just need another guy.
Three of them, right?
Yeah. I think he's going to be the biggest impact from the transfer portal. I think Vic Cutler sounds like he might be a depth guy right now. But Josh Simmons, 6'5", 310 pounds, was ranked a top 20 guard in 2021 by ESPN and 24/7 Sports. Was a 4-star prospect consensus, so all of the recruiting services had him there. Played for Fred Flintstone in San Diego State University. I still don't think he wears a headset, so not sure. But
who are we talking about here?
We're talking about Brady Hoke, man.
Oh God. Okay, well, that's 2 references out of you this morning I wasn't expecting. JJB and Brady Hoke, who's still coaching college football.
Yeah, at San Diego State, man. That's where he was before he went to Michigan, by the way. He was, I believe, the head coach there.
So he was so bad, they brought him back. That's interesting. That's a choice.
Yeah, I mean, he went to Oregon as the DC after Michigan. Then he went to Tennessee as a D lineman. He was the interim coach in 2017 when Jeremy Pruitt got fired. That was Jeremy Pruitt, right?
Yeah.
That had all the issues there.
Yeah.
That got hired instead of Greg Schiano when Clay Travis went after him.
Well, and then I think the Vols fans gathered outside of their stadium and with pitchforks and burning torches and protested pretty heavily the Greg Schiano possibility, which worked out for Rutgers.
Yeah, does Rutgers have an indoor facility yet?
I don't know. Word on the street is that Schiano's still trying to run across the field and get his hands on Bryant Day.
But back to Brady Hoke real quick, and then we'll get off this tangent.
Do we have to?
He went to San Diego State in 2019 as the D-line coach, and then in 2020 was promoted to the head coach there for his second stint. His first stint there was in 2009 to 2010 as the head coach. Previous to that, he was the head coach at Ball State. But that's an interesting circle of life, right? Coming around for a transfer. Josh Simmons, Jimmy Crack Corn, and I don't care.
That was a lot of Brady Hoke history that I think is going to go one in one ear and out the other right after we finish this.
Hey man, sometimes you got to go off on a tangent and and provide that insight. You know,
the insight
that's what we're all about.
They need.
That's what we're all about here at High Street Sports is providing that additional context, those great tangents. But back to Jimmy Crack Corn, I don't care Simmons. He started all 13 games last season at right tackle. This season is being looked at as the guy at left tackle. I really am excited to see what he can do. I trust that Justin Fry has him on the right track and is going with the right guys. Would really, really like to see what this offensive line's all about. And I think you're going to I think that they can be good. Justin Fry also mentioned in that same press conference I was talking about, is just talking about stacking good days on good days. And that's really how he's kind of evaluating all of the battles right now, is just making sure that the guys that have a good day, they stack another day and really get that momentum. So those are some of the things to look out for as far as the O-line goes. And you mentioned it earlier, Zone 6 has a very talented room, has a very, very experienced and good room. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think he needs to be talked about a lot just yet. We know who he is. We've seen what he can do. He has a few things that he could work on in his game, mainly pass blocking and route running during games. But if you saw that clip this week of him going against Denzel Burke, getting off the line, and he just made Denzel Burke just stand there flat-footed, shake his head, and walk away, I think Marv's been in the lab improving. Emeka Ibuka, I think he really needs to take a big step this season and become even more consistent than he was last season. I do see him as the number 1 or the number 2 overall receiver this season, if he can do that. I really do. And when I say number 2 overall, I mean number 2 in the nation. I think he can be the second best wide receiver in the nation. But there's still one question to ask, and that is, and that is, can he be, or who is the third quarterback or wide receiver? Who is the third wide receiver this season? Is it going to be a guy like Jaden Ballard, who's been in the program for a couple of years? Is it going to be someone like Carnell Tate, who seems to be stepping up this camp? I'm not sure yet, but I would like to see someone there consistently. We know X is going to play there a little bit. He'll be probably the third guy in the slot. But if you move Emeka into the slot, which we know he can play, who do you put outside? Do you put out the deep threat guy, Jaden Ballard, give him a shot? I think you do, because I think you need a guy that can take the top off, not just Marvin Harrison Jr. You need to have someone else to draw that coverage to away from Marvin, or you can just throw the ball to Jaden Ballard and hopefully he catches it. He only had one drop last season. Outside of that, caught every ball that he was targeted, only had 9 targets, but still one drop out of those 9 targets, pretty dang good, in my opinion.
No, I agree with that. And I think, you know, to your point of, you know, moving Emeka around and seeing what you can do with him out of the slot, and even keeping Emeka on the outside, moving Marvin to the slot for a couple plays, and putting Jaden on the other side, could add another dimension to the Ohio State offense when you talk about 3 guys on the field at one time who are all dynamic. And, you know, like we've seen, in smaller sample sizes, obviously, with Jaden Ballard, he can go out there and make plays, and he is a very, very capable receiver to be in this offense. But one guy that I don't want to get overshadowed here is Julian Fleming. And like I said in episode 1, when you have a guy who was the number 1 receiver in the country when he was coming out of high school, a guy that's battled a lot of injury, a guy that has, you know, kind of had to wait his turn to get into the offense. Julian Fleming is a guy who can, no pun intended, be an X factor for the receiver room as well, outside of the Blocko X-Man himself. So, you know, you look at the receiver room, and it sometimes can seem pretty unlikely, or, you know, it can be confusing to see how you're going to get, you know, Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate on the field. But you look at, and there's guys all up and down that room that can go out there and make plays. So I think there's a lot of flexibility for Brian Hartline and Ryan Day in the offense to see what they want to do with those receivers and how they can, you know, add another wrinkle to an already really good passing game. And, you know, obviously you can't have a good passing game if you don't know who your quarterback is. But that should happen here in the next couple of days, I would think. But, you know, they had another scrimmage yesterday. So, do you want to talk about the quarterbacks and what you think that race is right now, and where do you think it is, and who do you think is running, you know, out front?
Yeah, I think that, you know, right now, what we've seen throughout camp is that the narrative has been it's Kyle McCord's job to lose, right? And that was set very, very early back in spring practice, even by the Buckeye beat. I don't know that they are correct. In my mind, right, when you think about a quarterback battle like this, you've got 2 different skill sets. You've got a more pro style quarterback in Kyle McCord. He can run. Don't get that twisted. He's probably very similar to CJ in that sense, where he can do it. He just doesn't want to all the time and would rather sling it. Has chemistry with Marvin Harrison Jr. They went to high school together. That's a huge thing. I'm pretty sure they're roommates as well, Marvin and Kyle McCord. So you've got a couple of factors there, which kind of led everyone to say, guess what? Kyle McCord is the guy to lose. He's been in the program. This is his 3rd season, sat behind CJ Stroud twice. For 2 seasons, tried to get out there. Didn't get a lot of playing time last season or the season before, but I think that he can be the guy. And then you've got Devin Brown, who changes his number to 33, looks kind of goofy back there in the pocket with that number. Kind of more reminds me of James Laurinaitis than a quarterback. But in that sense, also kind of reminds me of Mr. Shoelace, Denard Robinson, when he wore that 98 jersey for the season. Yeah, exactly. Just looks a little goofy. But I don't know if you've seen this either, but Teddy Bridgewater wore number 50 in a preseason game
I did see
for the
that.
Lions. Yeah, so just a lot of odd things going on with numbers these days. So nothing really to look into like that. But he's more of a dual threat guy. Has a great arm, can sling the ball, but also can move around. And I do think that could be one of the factors that could lead to him being the starter here, and that is just because he can go out and make those plays. We haven't, if you remember Justin Fields, his first season, what was his first touchdown? It was quarterback power left, right? And just took it to the house. And we saw him make plays with his feet many, many times. CJ Stroud, not as many, right? We saw his first touchdown was a running touchdown against Michigan State, but we didn't see that as much. I think at the college level and 2023, you need a guy that can move, that can get out of the pocket and run around. Look at what Aaron Nolan did on that absolutely fantastic game-winning touchdown throw the other day. Still a nice, really nice throw, but had to use his feet to get out of there, elude a sack, and make the play. and I think that both of these guys, regardless of who wins, is going to be the guy for Ohio State this season. I think that, you know, as we've seen kind of with Ryan Day, once this quarterback battle is done, it's going to be put to bed. We won't see a 2015 situation, at least in my mind, where it was, is it JT or is it Cardell? Is it JT or is it Cardell? I don't think we're going to see that. I think that if we do see a change in the season, it's because one of them has been a better practice player and more consistent, while the starter has not really shown their true potential in a game. And I think you could potentially make that change down the road, but I don't think you're going to see that. I think that Ryan Day is going to find his one, stick with that one. But I think one of the keys to this too is whomever is the number 2 guy needs to play way, way more than Kyle McCord did last year.
And needs to be able to throw the ball more than Kyle McCord was afforded the opportunity to when he saw action in those games. Practice reps are all fine and good. But when you really get down to it, you got to get out there in a situation where you're able to throw the ball instead of just getting in the game with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter and you're just handing the ball off to Dallin Hayden 7 times in a row and then kneeling it out. So you got to let the backup go out there and get some opportunity to throw the ball. Whoever that is, I don't know if I necessarily have a preference in who that quarterback is going to be. I have enough faith in Coach Day and the staff to make sure that, whoever it is in a situation where they can win and go win a national championship, because I think there's one thing that Ohio State wants to do this year. And, well, there's a couple of things that Ohio State wants to do this year. It starts in Ann Arbor, the last game of the year, and it finishes with a Big Ten championship and a national championship. So whoever that quarterback that goes out there week one, I have nothing but faith in them to go out there and do the things that they need to do to put Ohio State in that position of, accomplishing the goals and be where they want to be at the end of the season. So I think, there's a lot to be said for some continuity with the best player in college football and a quarterback that's thrown to him for a long time. But I also think there's a lot to be said for the moxie, the attitude, the spice that Devin Brown brings to the field. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think I'm going to step out on a limb here and say that this whole quarterback situation is going to be announced probably by the end of the week.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the noise on Twitter yesterday, X.
Not my social media.
Sorry. But a lot of it was the expectation is Ryan Day's press conference on Monday is when the quarterback battle is going to be decided. There was a lot of smoke around a guy named Devin Brown. Not sure if you've heard of him, as being the guy. I don't know if that is the case or if that is true. But all indications are pointing that way. I will say this, that Zach Smith had this earlier this week, and actually he had it on Monday, last Monday, and said that was the case. And so, and has been this offseason very consistently saying that if this quarterback battle goes long, look for Devin Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because Devin Brown is the more athletic guy. If these guys can't be consistent in practice, the one thing you need is that X factor. So, I think that this is one of those things where I think you've got multiple different narratives being spun. You've got the narrative from the Buckeye Beat saying that they want Kyle McCord. I don't know if that's what they're truly saying, but they've been in Kyle's camp most of this offseason. And now you've got Devin Brown kind of being more consistent from what I've heard in practices, in the scrimmages, and is separating himself from Kyle McCord in this sense. I don't know what to make of it. I just want to hear the announcement. I think that I think this battle has brought up something that a lot of fans need to realize, is that playing one side or the other is you playing favorites. But you got to take a step back and remember, at the end of the day, you're rooting for your team.
Mm-hmm.
And you're rooting for those coaches that get paid millions of dollars to put that team in the best position possible. I don't think that any coach wants to put them in a position where they're not going to win. So I think whoever wins this battle should be the starter, is the right guy for the job. And we're going to see something different this season. I think that, both of these quarterbacks bring something different than what we've seen for the last couple of years with Ryan Day quarterbacks. I don't necessarily know if these guys are on the same level as the last two quarterbacks yet, but they very well could be. And I was even skeptical of CJ Stroud back when he came in. So I'm skeptical of both of them, but I think that in my mind, the winner needs to be the best player. You need to put your best 11 on the field, and you need to put the guys out there that are going to bring you wins and get to that ultimate goal of a national championship. But remember, that goal can't be completed without the other two goals. And that is beating Michigan. You have to do that. You can't lose again. And winning the Big Ten championship game. Those two things, I think you're going to, whomever it is going to have to figure out how to do that. Both are young guys. So I'm excited to see how this ends up and what the team looks like going from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are 13 days away from the Buckeyes taking the field in Bloomington, Indiana against the Hoosiers. I think, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Sunday next week starts game prep for the Buckeyes for the first game of the year. So look
and
for
classes start too.
Yeah, well, we ain't come here to play school.
Well, yes, but you got to remember that's going to change. That's going to change a lot for the Buckeyes in camp and practice. They're going to be more focused on playing school at first to get that right, and then football will come. But I think that that's going to be the challenge this week, and so really solidifying some of those lineups is going to make a big difference, especially going into game prep for Indiana.
We'll hear from Ryan Day coming up with the imminent quarterback decision and thoughts on the rest of the team. Stay here. We're gonna really lock in this next week or so. Next week we'll do a Indiana preview for our first game week pod of High Street Sports. So any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that, what people need to realize is that this Ohio State team is going to be very good. They're ranked 4 for a reason. And I don't think that that is reflective of what this team could be. I think that this team could be number 1. They could win a national championship at the end. But you got to do all of the things right. Got to take it one game at a time, and Indiana's up first.
Yep. So the road to accomplish Ohio State's goals starts in 2 weeks in Indiana. So we will, like I said, we will have more stuff coming to you guys next week. A little bit of an Indiana preview. We'll go over, some of the announcements that could happen this week as far as the team goes. And we will see you guys next week on another edition of High Street Sports. Make sure when you go to the YouTube that you are subscribed, you comment, let us know what you think of the episode, hit the bell, never miss an episode here on High Street Sports. So we're just getting started. This was episode 3. Vince is back. We're heading, straight towards football season.
You'll hear us here every Sunday, sometimes on Wednesdays as well. We'll be starting what hopefully will become a more national college focused football show coming out on Wednesdays. So look forward to that as well. Want to continue to bring good content. So please subscribe, give us that feedback in the comments section. And please, actually, if you want, I don't care, troll us. Who cares, right? Anything to give us that engagement, because we want to make sure that we can bring our voices of the common fan to all of you, and build something great here. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Peace.